Everybody, this is your host, Elijah Jackson, and I want to welcome you to the Full Court Press Podcast. This is a journey that we'll be on together for those who love the game of basketball, those who just love sports in general, man. I hope that you enjoy this as much as I enjoy bringing it to you. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. Today, we're starting on the basketball tip, and one thing that you guys have come to know about me for sure is that I love the Los Angeles Lakers. I love basketball in general, but I've always been a big LA fan, going back to my days growing up watching Kobe. And I've always been a big LeBron fan and an appreciator of his game. So when the two converged, it was a perfect world for me. But recently we've been going through some struggles trying to rebuild our franchise, and now we're centered upon things, as a lot of people like to say nowadays, we're shifted out of the LeBron James era into the Luka Doncic era. And that's something that I kind of want to address first off before we get into the main crux of the story. It's such a weird narrative around the situation to me. So many people seem to be trying to add drama to the situation or frame it as if, LeBron James wants out of LA now that the team is about Luka. Are we forgetting that LeBron James for years has been trying to pass the keys on, trying to get Anthony Davis to step into the number one role, a progression that we just did not see come from AD, and we all wanted. So LeBron kept going in spite of his age. And we all think now that LeBron James now has undoubtedly a top 5 player in the NBA at the age of 26 on his team, who plays the game largely similarly to LeBron James, minus the athleticism, obviously. We think LeBron has some type of problem with handing him the keys, showing him the way to being a winning player, much like Dwayne Wade did for LeBron James back when he went to Miami. LeBron is in that big brother, that not father figure role, but in that role of being the winning player, being the guy with the experience, the vet who's been there, who's done that. And he can now show somebody who really has the talent and the capability to take on those reins after his days are done. I mean, he's 40, going on 41 years old. He understands that it's time for that. And even with that, LeBron still plays to the level of, you could say, 1A, 1B versus a Batman and a Robin. Because LeBron James, I know we all want to slap that label on him like he's in decline, but despite his age, he hasn't really shown much decline. Yes, I guess there's some in athleticism. Yes, definitely from his prime. But I guess the main thing that we really say is the ability to carry out the energy, the same level of intensity for a full 48 minutes, the way that we saw LeBron James could drag lesser teams to the highest pinnacle. But the main thing that I want to address today, especially regarding the Los Angeles Lakers, is the additions of Deandre Ayton, the additions of Marcus Smart. And before we even get on too much further, let's get right down into it, man. I do not understand the skepticism, the criticism, the pessimistic mindset and view of the Deandre Ayton addition. We all remember last season, we were ready and the trade was basically done for our first round pick, Dalton Connect out of Tennessee, to be sent over to Charlotte in exchange for Mark Williams. And this is no disrespect to Mark Williams. I love his game. I love what he's brought to Charlotte as a young player coming out of college. But Mark Williams is not Deandre Ayton. And that's not to say that Deandre Ayton is going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar by any means. But have we forgotten that Deandre Ayton has largely been around a 15, 16-point guy, definitely a double-digit rebounds guy his entire career? I mean, the year that the Phoenix Suns went to the NBA championship, Deandre Ayton was 18-10, about a block and a half a game. Even last year, looking at Deandre Ayton, he only played about 40 games from the entire season, and he ranked 9th in the NBA in lobs completed. So now that you take him from a team in Portland who, much respect to Chauncey and a lot of the young talent that they had last year, like Ant Simons, trying to bring along Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, and so on, you don't really see that many players come in and as a young guy with no vets around, without a lot of leadership. We say that he came from the Phoenix situation because of character issues, and Portland was never a situation that looked to put anything around him to correct those character issues or to dive deeper into building up Deandre Ayton as a centerpiece. You didn't have any veteran big men behind him that could say, hey, this is how we do it. This is what I do off the court to keep my mind focused on the game. This is the things that I do to progress myself, to build my game year after year. Outside of Jeremy Grant, he's a vet player by this point in his career, but still relatively a young man, especially outside of the context of the NBA, and may not have that stature or be just that type of player to really say the vocal things, the vocal leadership of, hey, young fella, this is how we do it. This is what you need to do. But now you put Deandre Ayton back into a familiar situation of when he was on a championship team. You have your star vet, maybe later in his career, later in his prime, or later in his powers, as I would like to say, going from Chris Paul to a LeBron James, one of the greatest players, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. You have your Devin Booker, your younger star, your face of the franchise in Luka Doncic, who he's going to be able to feed off of, being a pick and roll big, being a low post threat, being that energy big that you really need. We all forget, as much credit or as much blame that you'd like to put on Deandre Ayton for the failures of Phoenix or the failures of Portland, they don't make that NBA Finals without Deandre Ayton. And it's not been that many years. What is that, 2021, 2022, that they went to the NBA Finals? Deandre Ayton isn't that far removed from being a winning player. Part of a franchise who, quite frankly, we've never seen much winning from the Suns as a franchise as a whole, other than the years with Charles Barkley, the years with Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni and Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion and things of those nature. And that's a different completely time and era. Whereas you look to things now, especially under the new ownership of Matt Ishbia, as much blame as you want to put on Deandre Ayton, you could put on the ownership and the front office. I mean, you look at the situation between Monty Williams and Deandre Ayton that started the initial snowball rolling to the avalanche of all the overhaul and turnover in Phoenix. Just because this is now his second time being moved on from a franchise doesn't necessarily mean that it's so much a black mark on him, or even so much that it means that the first move or this move was the right move. You look at the Phoenix situation. Now, yes, Monty Williams, I personally do like Monty Williams, and you have to give him his credit. He reached an ABA Finals as that head coach. He has the tutelage, being a player that played up under Pop and spent many years building up his resume and has coached other teams with success. But Monty Williams is a former point guard, and even learning from a former shooting guard, and even learning from a vet like Chris Paul. He can give you veteran leadership. He can give you great advice, but he doesn't know the life, just like Monty Williams doesn't know the life of an NBA 7-footer. There's only so much that they can teach you and tell you to guide you through the progression of that without offering you any backup leadership. Same like we said earlier with the Trailblazers. There wasn't really any backup leadership, any backup veteran big man to show Deandre Ayton, hey, young fella, this is what you got to do if you want to be in those echelon of guys that's getting these max deals and getting these contracts and known throughout NBA history, and not just making one appearance in the finals, but maybe going to multiple finals, winning multiple finals. This is what it takes. If you don't give a young guy that opportunity, you don't give a young guy that tutelage, it's very hard for him to get there. And especially in the NBA that's changed, that's not so much a big man focused league where things are more focused on the guard. It's less focused on sets. It's more about the big man being able to guard the perimeter. So you really have to look at the full totality of the situation. And like I said, you have to evenly, despite if the stories and the reports of him not getting along with Monty Williams, or maybe bumping heads with a Chris Paul, or his attitude, his drive, and his motivation maybe not being to the level where it needs to be. We all may have been in that situation, and some of us are more driven than others in our personal lives and have been through things. But no matter what the case is, often it took some form of situation. It took some sort of help, whether it be spiritual help and spiritual guidance, or it being an older mentor, or even a peer and a friend, or someone in our lives, or just an experience or a trauma that we went through to push us to the point to where we are self-driven and self-motivated outside of the circumstances that we may be in, outside of how we feel on a day-to-day basis. Going from a franchise where you felt like we have a chance to win a championship alongside a Devin Booker, alongside a Chris Paul, bringing in a Kevin Durant, alongside of Mikal Bridges and things of that nature, to going to a Portland who, yes, has young talent, but is far from winning. It's far from being proven to win anything. It's far from even the days of Portland being considered for a championship. I mean, Portland's closest bid to go to a championship is back to the 2000s and the disrespectful name, the Jailblazer days when they had a Rasheed Wallace and maybe a young J.O. and Arvydas Sabonis and players of that nature and Stoudemire and Scottie Pippen and things of that nature. But that's far removed from the days of the Blazers being a contending franchise. And yes, Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum, they had good years, and Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge, they had good years, but never to the stature of being a franchise that we look at, oh, Portland is a consistently well-built franchise, a consistent contender, a team that we consistently expect, hey, they can be there, they have a chance. That's not what Portland was. So as a young man coming from a struggling situation to where you may not didn't see eye to eye with a coach or you didn't see eye to eye with a franchise, going into a new situation where you feel like you're almost shipped off and abandoned, it may be hard for you to grow in that situation if things aren't placed strategically to your to-do list to raise you up, to make you a better player. But you look at the situation. Did the Suns even make the right decision in the first place? I mean, you look at it overall. Monty Williams and Deandre Ayton, okay, maybe they don't see eye to eye. And maybe the situation is so bad it's to the point where you have to move on. But do you go from going to an NBA Finals to then turn around as a good franchise, as a winning franchise? If we were to compare this to the Celtics, the Lakers, it's the Warriors, or any franchise that you want to see as a consistent contending franchise. Do you go from, hey, we drafted this guy number 1 overall, and we have a NBA head coach who's taking us to a finals? Okay, let's move on from both of them. Nearly simultaneously, not quite at the same time, but do you scratch both of those off your list of being an NBA champion or being a contender, being the loser of the finals in that year? Or do you keep at least one piece of what brought you that success to move on? That starts to show, in my opinion, that it's not so much on Ayton. And even we all know, if you really look at the history of the league, the big man position, the 4 and the 5, but specifically the 5, even in the greatest of talents, the youngest of big men who's come into the league, the greatest of big men who's come into the league, often it takes 3, 4, 5 years to come into the league. And especially today's league, where it's not centered around low post game. It's not centered around you being a post-up big. And if you're not a stretch big, it may take even more time for you to develop. But the big man position has always taken 3, 4, 5 years before you really see the potential and the totality of what a big man can be in this league. I mean, you come into the league as a young man, often between the ages of 18, 19 to 22, 23, 24, around that age. And the most physically demanding position you probably will play, at least from a strength and a will standpoint, is the center position. There's a lot of banging with grown men. I always like to hear Keyshawn Johnson say, you're playing against the grown men with beers and car seats in the back. These aren't kids that you've been playing and dominating throughout your career in high school and maybe even college. These are grown men now who've had their years and time of training, being in the weight room, and just coming into the natural genetics of their grown man body. I mean, you look back at Deandre Ayton, yeah, Giannis got 50 in that closeout game, but you had Deandre Ayton, a very fresh and young player in the league, taking on one of the greatest players we've ever seen in Giannis Antetokounmpo, one-on-one, with no defensive adjustment of bringing a double, bringing help side, bringing any type of hedge or anything. He's just going straight one-on-one, head up with Giannis the entire series. there has to be some type of respect and some type of molding of that foundation of what you had in that moment to build on it. And I circle back to say, you look at the Phoenix franchise from that point on, you made moves you move on from Mikal Bridges. You change your team defensively. And rightfully so. You have a chance to get a player like Kevin Durant, a generational talent, one of the greatest players, probably the greatest scorer maybe from the perimeter position, given his size and his overall versatility of scoring that we've ever seen in the league. Not knocking that move. But you see constant bad decisions from the Phoenix franchise. And you can't just shift all that blame to Deandre Ayton. It's like we said, do you move on from the winning coach and the winning player when their relationship was supposedly the issue? Choose one or the other. Okay, you made that decision there. You moved on from the coach. Now we get down the line. You have a chance to have Chris Paul, Booker, Kevin Durant, and Deandre Ayton. Still a great chance for a championship team. But now you find yourself in the revolving door of, let me find the right coach. And you bring in winning coach after winning coach who's won championships or been a championship and keep sending them in and out the door, giving them no time to develop. Then you move on from a Deandre Ayton. Then you move on from a Chris Paul for the redundancy of a Bradley Beal. And I still believe Bradley Beal can be a greatly productive player, at least an 18 to 20 point a night guy on a winning franchise. But did you need Bradley Beal when you had Devin Booker already? Did it make sense to get rid of your veteran point guard and leader, the organizer, your coach on the floor, for a player who you already have? Bradley Beal, honestly, at his peak, is Devin Booker at best, and maybe not even Devin Booker's level. Maybe a bit of a better defender, in my opinion. But it just shows bad organizational character and bad organizational decisions, and then you shift blame and you shift the narrative to, oh, he has a poor mentality and a poor attitude, when you didn't do your best to build on it. And that's just my honest opinion. And like I said, everyone was going crazy for the Mark Williams deal. Oh, if you have your 7-footer now, you can go to the finals. My true feeling, and just by the facts of it, Deandre Ayton has shown to be better than what Mark Williams is so far in this league. Where's that same energy? Without losing your first-round pick, without losing an Austin Reeves or a Rui Hachimura or a Jared Vanderbilt, key young pieces that I felt that we could hold on to. So why can't it be the same situation, having a top 5 player in the league? And arguably, in my opinion, LeBron James is a top 5 player still in this league. Yeah, he may be older, and we don't like to say that, and, oh, we have to give it to this person or give it to that person simply because he's declining in age. But you look at what LeBron James produces, how a team has to prepare for him, how you have to still give him double team focus and triple team attention in a lot of situations, and what he can pull out of other players. You still have at the worst, 2 top 10 players in this league. So I would say that Deandre Ayton is coming to a franchise now that's better, and a roster now that's better than the roster that he was on with that championship appearance back in Phoenix. So moving on, still discussing the Lakers. One of the big things that we see is, well, before we even get into, I want to talk about Bronny James, but before we even get into what Bronny James has shown in his development through this summer league and at the tail end of last year, and the things that he produced in the G League last year, let's talk about the addition of Marcus Smart and where Marcus Smart fits into everything. I love the addition. It's a player that honestly I kind of wanted us to go after and make some type of trade for, just given the situation of what's going on in Washington. I know Marcus Smart would rather be in a situation where he still has a chance to contend coming out of Boston, spending that year or two in Washington, and now coming back to a winning franchise. It's a move that I desperately wanted us to make, honestly. Needing the perimeter defense, needing the energy and attitude that Marcus Smart and the veteran leadership and the vocal leadership that Marcus Smart brings. Not too far from removed from being a defensive player of the year, which is very rare, especially in the modern age of basketball, to be a smaller guard at that, but a perimeter player at all to win defensive player of the year, not playing small forward, power forward, center. That's something that we really need. Now, where does Marcus Smart fit into this team as currently constructed? There's a lot of ways I see that this team as presently built could go. Now, while I do love Marcus Smart's game, at this point, either there's one of two ways. Either I see him playing heavy bench minutes, almost as a six-man, 20, 24 minutes a night, or he could be the starter in a situation where we play a lot of positionless basketball today. And while Marcus Smart may be maybe you list him as your point guard in the starting role, and you go Marcus Smart, Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Deandre Ayton as your starting lineup. You still don't have to have Marcus Smart dominate the ball. You still can have Luka really be your point guard offensively, and Marcus Smart is your point guard defensively. He guards the main scorer from the perimeter position. Like last year, we definitely could have used Marcus Smart in the Timberwolves series. Now you have Deandre Ayton referring back to the Timberwolves series to deal with a Rudy Gobert and just the size and helping out on the glass. Tim Boards makes a lot of difference when you're not relying on guys who have 7-foot stature or guys who have a proven record of, I can get you 10 rebounds a night no matter who's on the floor. An entirely different structure without losing any pieces outside of Dorian Finney-Smith. And that's another story for another day. But as a Laker fan and as a show who will honestly bring up a lot of Laker topics throughout the years, throughout the season, I'm not a fan of Rob Pelinka. I won't get too much into that. Yes, we did get Luka Doncic. Yes, we did make the Marcus Smart move and find Austin Reeves and different things like that. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of Rob Pelinka. I feel like to this day, our GM or president of operations should still be Magic Johnson, and that's a situation that was mishandled. But getting back to things, that's another story for another day. Bronny James has shown a lot of progression with a roster who, me looking at the players that I specifically like, the players that as a head coach, as an aspiring head coach myself, that I would play, we have a roster that can go bare minimum 10 to 11 deep with solid quality players who can get you 10 plus points or 5-7 rebounds, 5-7 assists in different roles and fill out different positions. And then we still have a few expiring contracts and players with some intrigue and talent that I would be willing to move on to add the right pieces to, and picks or whatever, and draft compensation to move on from, and to add the right pieces, because we have a good mix of depth to where I feel you can risk some of those picks in some of your future, having kept so much of your young core, DeAndre Ayton and Luka being 26. Austin Reeves being around the same age, 24, 25, 26. Rui around the same age. Vanderbilt around the same age. Bronny James proving that he's not just here by nepotism, and proving that he's here because he can genuinely play the game of basketball. A lot of people like to downplay his athleticism because, we see a lot of players dunk the ball like that. You don't see a lot of players that 6'1" dunk the ball like LeBron James Jr. does. You don't see a lot of players 6'1", 6'2", that we can say, hey, first G League game of the night, you're taking on 6'10", 6'9", Cooper Flag, and I need you to put that defense on. You don't see a lot of players who can, while they can be a knockdown shooter, can also put the ball on the floor and create, but he also has the mentality and the IQ to get others involved. Now, that's why I truly believe the best scenario as currently constructed, I would love to see Bronny James get at least 10, maybe even 15 minutes a night, given what he does with those initial minutes. Playing in a backup point guard role, being our point guard of the second unit, and coming in and maybe him and Marcus Smart being our defensive unit, coming in off the bench and really providing a defensive spark, or coming in situations much like you used to see with, like you would have Harrison Barnes start and Iguodala come off the bench and different players come in the game. And while they may not always explode scoring-wise and build on a lead in some cases, they can always at least maintain, and defensively and with smart basketball IQ, maintain what your starters have built so that they can get a good, decent breather to come in and continue. Something that we desperately struggled with last year. Honestly, I'd rather had Bronny James and Dalton Connect coming in for a lot of minutes last year that we were given to a Goodwin or Gabe Vincent or just different players, bringing in an Alex Lynn. I would rather see players that we know can be here for the long haul of our future, especially for the duration of Luka's tenure. Someone that can come in and, hey, give them 5 minutes, give them 10 minutes. Let me see what they can contribute to this game. If nothing else, but to give Luka, LeBron, AR a few minutes to breathe. And with that being said, having Bronny come in and be able to, coming off last year, he averaged, 20 points, like 25-5 in the G League, playing against, while it's a lower tier, it's professional players, professional athletes going through the summer league this year. I mean, not just your players who are just walking through the G League on a chance. He's playing against players, young prospects that are high picks in his draft, players that are expected to come into this league and really do something, from a Cooper Flagg to a Jeremiah Fears and so on and so forth. You see him giving genuine production, and not just the numbers in itself, but the efficiency and the IQ that he can bring to the game, much like his father, not to the same star level, talent level, but like I said, in a bench role for a team where we just saw much of the discussion last year being depth, teams with depth that can bring in a lot of looks, that can throw a lot at different defenders and throw a lot at different star players. Bronny James can definitely be one of those and contribute. So as we look down the line, and even another young guy that I haven't heard get any media coverage, and I guess, it's always kind of a weird situation when you're even at this point, maybe a 2-year guy, a 3-year guy, a 4-year college guy. It's looked at out honestly sometimes with a lot of skepticism, but I mean, you look at it and Dalton Connect, short-lived success, but he did have a 40-point game last year, and then kind of fell out of favor with JJ Redick for whatever reason. But a 3-4-year college guy who transferred and went through different situations and then came into the league as a more seasoned prospect, as a more highly touted prospect, first-round pick. You look at Austin Reeves, a guy who spent 4 years in college, comes into the league undrafted to come into a perfect situation where he felt like he can contribute to winning, and you see diamond in the rough. Very unique player, someone who's able to be alongside LeBron James and Luka Doncic and still, or LeBron James and Anthony Davis and still continue to provide 20 points a game. That's unique, because as the third option, down to the third, fourth option is usually not available for those guys. You don't usually see that level of production from guys. But Austin Reeves has a very unique game and a very unique way of being able to create both on and off the ball, and coming in and giving a spark and giving energy and playing with high basketball IQ, especially on the offensive end. But getting back to it, a guy I've heard get nearly no media coverage since being picked up by the Lakers as an undrafted player coming out of college is Villanova's Eric Dixon. And I believe truly, at bare minimum, Eric Dixon can be the 8th, 9th guy off the bench. And bare minimum, I mean, he's a 6'8", 240, 250 marksman. The guy can shoot, can create. I mean, he plays almost like a mix of James Harden and Julius Randle, in my opinion, if you go watch his game. And the progression from him going from his freshman year to his sophomore year to his junior year, averaging 4 points, to getting into double digits, to last year being the leading scorer in college basketball, averaging almost 24, 25 points a game at Villanova. And this isn't some small rinky-dink college that, we're just going to funnel him the ball and it's gimmicky offense where we just want him to score and get. No, it's Villanova basketball. You're playing top-level competition every night. And to lead the nation in scoring, coming into the league with a man body, with an NBA-ready jump shot. I mean, I don't understand why that's not getting more coverage or more notoriety as someone who can really come in and contribute. And then especially for us to be a franchise looking to win now, or looking to have depth that can go into a playoff game now, you want those guys who's had that college experience, who knows what it's like to grow, who knows what it's like to be in a system and play a role and I don't necessarily have to be the star player to contribute. So I said, we won't get into that too much, just not to take up too much time in this episode, but remember that I said it today. Keep an eye out for Eric Dixon. I believe that this season, much like AR came in, maybe not to the same level, he might have come in with the opportunity, given that we have Luka and AR and LeBron, to average 15, 20 points. But look for Eric Dixon to be a real contributor in this rookie year, given the opportunity, whether that be being called up from just being a two-way guy and getting actual minutes with the Lakers. I think he can really make a strong contribution as a rookie this year, right now, given the opportunity. So shifting and transitioning, and actually before we move on, one last thing I want to say about the Lakers, because I know I did mention that Marcus Smart could start, but truth be told, another player that I feel like didn't get enough usage in last year's playoffs and last year's season was Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt is a very unique player. Jared Vanderbilt has an opportunity to be the best perimeter defender in the league, given the chance. Jared Vanderbilt has the opportunity to be that glue guy, that energy guy, whether you want to say like a Draymond Green or a Dennis Rodman or whatever guy you want to compare him to. Jared Vanderbilt has a chance to be that, to come in and be a league leader in offensive rebounding, or to be a league leader in steals, or to be a block and a half, steal and a half type guy who brings energy and defense and honestly smart basketball IQ, even on the offensive end, though he's not a great shooter, though he's not a put the ball on the floor and really create his own shot type guy. He knows when and how to cut. He knows how to play off the screen. He knows how to play in the pocket and how to run the nail and how to be an off the ball addition and asset offensively. And I feel like he should have been brought in for heavier minutes in the Minnesota series when we were trying to play a lot of small ball, playing him at the 4 next to LeBron at the 5 in that small ball lineup against Minnesota as somebody who can at least come in and fight for rebounds on the glass, give that effort and be a defender and come in and take on a responsibility like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Gardner Anthony Edwards. But I believe, especially with him finally getting an off season and for the first time in a couple years here, to go into a season and have an off season where he's not rehabbing injuries or coming back from dealing with anything, that he can really focus on, hey, what's my role going to be on this team? Because he already has the energy. He has the defense. Let me see if I can improve myself he's got a nice lefty jump shot, honestly, from my view and my opinion. But let's see. He's always been a guy that's going to put in the work. So let's see an off-season of work of him understanding, hey, my role with the Luka and LeBron is going to be I can cut and, get to the basket. But they're going to need me to be able to spot up and knock down these open jump shots, maybe from the corner, maybe from the far wing. And I think that he can honestly do that. So the last thing that I'll say is, as currently constructed, my starting lineup honestly would be, I'm going Luka at the 1, Austin Reeves at the 2, Vanderbilt at the 3, LeBron James at the 4, Ayton at the 5. Then I'm going Bronny James at the 1 off the bench, Marcus Smart at the 2 off the bench, Dalton Connect at the 3, Rui Hachimura at the 4, and Jackson Hayes at the 5. I would love to see us find a guy like an Al Horford who will bump Jackson Hayes down to that 10th, 11th, 12th man off the bench. But I'm playing Rui Hachimura, a great shooter, a great player, honestly, as far as fitting a role and playing alongside LeBron James. I mean, he's shooting 41% from the 3, shooting about 48% from the field, giving you about 12, 15 points on a consistent basis. So that's somebody I really want to see get heavy 6-man minutes and not try to throw all of our offensive talent into the first unit and allow Rui to come in a situation where he's knowing, hey, this second run of offense, this second unit is definitely designed and built for me to come in and take over some of this scoring responsibilities so that I can give our lead guys a little breather and show everybody what I can do. But moving on from that and getting on from Lakers and free agency, still sticking with basketball before we transition, I really don't understand the narrative around USAB, and that's the USA men's basketball team We have the Olympics coming up here in the States, and it'll be in LA again in 2028. And there's so much discussion around, oh, America won't be winning the gold this time. And we may not. There's been years that we've lost prior to this, and we've had great talent, Hall of Fame players, and different things of that such. But I just don't understand the complete swap and shift just because we're getting out of the LeBron James, the Steph Curry, the KD era. There are still many great players, American-born players, who are eligible to play, who will be on that roster, who will be available to play and represent the U.S. to where it's far from a clean sweep. It's far from a just wipe out, because what you still have, no matter how much the game has progressed on an international level, and we definitely see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Canadian player, uh, Nikola Jokic from Serbia, Giannis Antetokounmpo playing in Greece. These are top players, superstars in our league, yes. But even with that said, we just said it, those three players are from three different countries. Whereas you name the three best American players, it's the three best American players from one country. And no matter how much international talent we get, the largest base of the NBA talent is still here in America, despite the level of stardom that they're at. So these are a few guys that I put together, and I know there are some guys, some names that I'm probably missing that I just didn't think of, or at the time I was just walking around just thinking on the topic the other day. And maybe you guys can drop something in the comments for me, put something, maybe next time we'll have a live chat and you guys can put some names in the chat for me. But just going position by position to name a few players who still give us a great chance to compete at the international level. Now, I'm going to start at the center because honestly, there was a lot of names that I just couldn't think of. We're not a real solid big man league. And I didn't go with somebody like Embiid, although Embiid did have like a nationalized citizenship to where he could play for us this past year. And plus, given Embiid's history, he might not be in the 2028 Olympics. It might not be something that he wants to put on his body, trying to be a winning player. As great of a talent as he is in the NBA, he might want to focus more so on that, kind of how they had Kawhi pull out of it this past year, which I didn't agree with, but that's another story for another day. So when it comes to the center position, having defenders, having size to deal with players, like we said, like a Jokic or a Giannis, just to have centers and rim protection, guys instantly come to my mind like a Jared Allen, a Zach Edey. And keep in mind, this is almost 4 years from now when the Summer Olympics will roll back around in 2028. And like I said, a guy like a Jared Allen, a legit starting big man for a great team here in the NBA. Zach Edey, a great prospect, and has post game that you can see coming from the college game and has potential here in the NBA game, even being able to shoot the ball a bit at his size and being a 7'3", 7'4" guy. A young guy like a Mitchell Robinson. Definitely thought of a guy like a Walker Kessler. Definitely thought of a guy like a Karl-Anthony Towns, even though he might be more of a four. And we have a couple guys at that four position, at the power forward position that I'll name, that could play center too. Like Bam, he played center, a lot of center for us before. But just looking at guys who would give us more of a traditional big size, I still threw a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns in there for his ability to, while he's not the greatest defender, his size at the rim combined with his shooting is still a great asset for a team like USAB. Moving on from the centers to the power forward positions, and a lot of these guys can be interchangeable, like starting with a guy like Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. out in Memphis. Another guy, great size, great rim protection, only a year or so, or maybe 2 years removed from being Defensive Player of the Year. A guy proven that he can be a rim protector, has offensive game, has the ability to be a floor spacing big, to be a spot-up shooter. A guy like an Evan Mobley, coming off a Defensive Player of the Year, young offensive talent. A guy like Aaron Gordon, who's shown he can be an energy, a glue guy, has the strength to compete and the energy and the IQ to compete with a Jokic, to compete with a lot of the foreign players that are more fundamentally based, while still having great athleticism to bring and offer to the team, getting out into the open floor, playing a lot of small ball, being able to shoot the ball, being able to get to the rim and create it. So a guy like Julius Randle, the same, has that strength and mentality to compete in the national game, in the international game, but also has the ability to create, has the size to play the 4 or the 5. Like we said, a Bam Adebayo, a young guy like Chet, definitely has that size, has that ability to create. We just saw him go from being a key piece, the third piece, to leading the Thunder to an NBA championship. And he'll have that time in those years from 2025 on to 2028 to grow and develop, and we'll see what he'll be. A guy like Zion, yes, his health is a concern, but in 4 years, we'll see what he can be, because when Zion is healthy, we all know what he can be. So we'll see if he has that opportunity to get his career on a stable basis, on a consistent track of playing at least 50 to 60 games in a season, to the point where he can go and at some point do what many young players aspire to do coming into this league, and that's represent the USA in men's basketball at some point in his career. Moving on to the small forward position. While Tatum is out right now dealing with the injury, like we said again, this is moving on into 2028. And at this point, Tatum and Brown are our more veteran guys. They've done a lot of winning since they've come into this league. A lot of playoff games, a lot of finals appearances, a lot of great battles, and time spent on USA, learning from guys like LeBron and Steph and KD and so on and so forth. You have a guy like Paolo Banchero. You have a guy like Cooper Flagg, who from this time moving on forward, if he can be what everyone expects that he will be in these next 3 years, given that time to develop, could come in and be an amazing player to contribute. You have a guy like a Jalen Williams, who we just saw people start to compare to a Scottie Pippen, who we just saw do things on the final stage that we've never seen before, especially from a guy that you would consider the second option next to a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. At the shooting guard position, you have legit superstar players, young star players like a Donovan Mitchell, a Anthony Edwards, a Devin Booker, even a guy who could come in and understand. You always have that on Team USA, like, no disrespect to anyone, but like a guy like a Richard Jefferson in his time with USA men's basketball, or Drew Holiday in his time with USA men's basketball. Not quite, or Derek White, not quite the star players, but a guy like a Austin Reeves. You're a 20-point per game scorer along stars in the NBA. You can definitely come into USA men's basketball and provide something in a role and be a contributing player. And then moving to the point guard position, the prime position of the NBA, we definitely have stars who can contribute to winning basketball in that setting. You have a guy like a Halliburton who will be back coming off injury. Hopefully we can see what he can be coming off this Achilles. But as a guy who shoots a set jumper, who's not really strongly based on speed or athleticism, he's more based in his passing and IQ, I think he'll come back as the same player, if not motivated to be even better, going through his rehab and taking the time to study and taking the lumps of losing in the finals and having that hunger and desire to compete coming back from that. You have a guy like a Ja, who, for whatever you want to say about him off the court, if he can stay right and stay consistent, you've seen him lead a Memphis franchise to winning basketball, to playoff contention here in the States, and he definitely can contribute to winning basketball. And a guy who's looked at for his flash and his athleticism, with his great dunking ability and his just great athleticism in general, but he's truly a point guard. He looks to set people up and get others involved. Perfect position for a USA, a international FIBA type game. Then you have another guy, Trae Young, great scorer, a great creator in his own right, but a true point guard, a 20-10 guy, basically, since he's come into this league. A LaMelo Ball, somebody who has size and IQ, who's 23 now, but will be 26, 27, entering the key years of his prime. You have a guy like a De'Aaron Fox, someone with a speed and an IQ and a true setup point guard that'll be hard for a lot of international players to deal with. You have a guy like a Jalen Brunson, who you see leading New York to great success, taking them to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. So just with that list said, like I said, and forgive me to any players that I didn't mention, any players that may feel like it may be a slight or something that I didn't mention. This is just a list of names that I thought of off the top of my head while I was thinking on the topic, just because, like I said, I've honestly been appalled by so many players and so many pundits throughout America on these TV shows and different things that just believe once LeBron and KD and Steph is gone, USA men's basketball is done, and the rest of the world has just progressed so much that we have no chance of winning in the future. So moving on to our last topic here of the show. Each show, maybe I should have said this at the beginning, but each show I will aim at least here at the start until maybe we're bringing in guests and more guest appearances and different things, or there may be different segments, different breaking news that may extend shows, but we generally aim to be an hour. And shifting the focus here from basketball, which is honestly just being straight with you, my favorite sport, but shifting to another kind of controversial and polarizing topic that's been going on throughout the summer and this offseason in the NFL is Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers. And the one thing that I just really have to say about it, I won't say everybody, because there are some people who believe that Aaron Rodgers can get them 10, 11 wins, who can make some progress on what Russ or maybe Justin Fields couldn't get them to last year. And I honestly feel like Justin Fields didn't get the best of opportunities. But I understood it was kind of a weird situation. You really want to go from Russell Wilson to Justin Fields, go from the vet to the young guy. And they had to vice versa that, given Russ's injury starting at the beginning of the season last year. But getting back to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers statistically was still definitely a starting quarterback in this league last year. And though they struggled early on in the season, I mean, it's still the Jets. I don't care what anyone has to say. We haven't seen the Jets be good, honestly, since Rex Ryan. So the organizational, much like we talked about with Deandre Ayton, the organizational dysfunction is a problem, especially when you're bringing in someone who's known to have, quote unquote, character issues or lack of leadership in some senses, or butts heads with different things and puts maybe itself first in the franchise. You gave Aaron Rodgers a lot of power in that New York situation and a lot of responsibility and a lot of say-so to where he won't have that in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin will run his team with the standard being the standard. Mike Tomlin will run his team defense first, run the ball first, still, even with Aaron Rodgers in the building. But now you have Aaron Rodgers and a DK Metcalf, more definitely Aaron Rodgers, the senior player, but more veteran players moving on from a George Pickens who understand what it takes to be a part of winning, who understand what it takes to be part of a progressively growing franchise. And just looking at the division, unless the Browns do what I think they should do and start Shador from day one, or at least by week 4 or 5 of the season, moving on from Flacco or whoever they decide to start, I don't think we're going to see much out of the Browns this year. Unless something miraculous happens in Cincinnati, I don't think we're going to see much out of Cincinnati this year. And yes, I do believe behind the Philadelphia Eagles that the Baltimore Ravens, top to bottom, are the most complete team in the league. Great secondary, a good linebacking core, a good D line, a good O line. Trying to upgrade the receiving core for Lamar. I am a big fan of Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman and what they can continue to develop into. I'm a big fan of them bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, and why he's not the DeAndre Hopkins of old. He may be the old DeAndre Hopkins. That's a player that I wanted them to give Lamar for many years. And not even just, I specifically love DeAndre Hopkins. I respect him as one of maybe the top 25, top 20 greatest NFL wide receivers I've seen in my lifetime, and through not just players that played in my lifetime and existed in this lifetime, but players that I've gone back and seen on tape, or players to be compared to in NFL history. I mean, we've constantly seen him produce, especially in his prime, with lesser talented quarterbacks than a Lamar Jackson, who has other weapons who will draw attention and who has a player growing and developing, like a player like Isaiah Likely that I love. You still brought I believe they still brought Mark Andrews back. You still have Derrick Henry, who's going to draw a lot of attention. And just giving Lamar that big body possession receiver where he doesn't have to be pinpoint accurate every time. Somebody that can speak life to him as a veteran player, like, hey, I'm going to be there for you in those key situations. I'm going to be there for you. Look for me when you feel like it's all breaking down. The Ravens, for sure, I feel like will win this division. That's my opinion. But going from there, why wouldn't the Steelers have the next best opportunity at winning this division? I mean, you really take a second and step back and look at it. We saw maybe the greatest of what Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow can be last year. I mean, throwing the ball all over the place, tons of yards, tons of touchdowns, and it still doesn't get you anything without having an upgraded O-line. It still doesn't get you anything without having a far greater improved defense than what they've had. I mean, they lost players like a Jesse Bates over time. You have the contract dispute going on with your number overall, your first round pick in this year's draft, and Stewart, who may not even play for this franchise, but if he does, he's missed a lot. And training camp is coming up here soon. You have a guy like Trey Henderson that led the league in sacks last year, and you still haven't honored his contract, still sticking to being the cheap franchise that we've always kind of known the Bengals to be. And yes, you paid T. Higgins, but in paying T. Higgins and paying Jamar Chase and paying a Joe Burrow, when you get all these contracts done, it limits what you can add to an already starved and deprived defense. So how much of a step forward are you taking this year? Is Joe Burrow going to throw 6,000 yards this year? Is Jamar Chase getting 20, 30 touchdowns this year? Is T. Higgins getting 10, 15, 20 touchdowns this year? I mean, it's going to take something astronomical. I mean, video game level. I mean, even beyond Madden, maybe NCAA video game level, for you to just be a solely offensive-based team on such a deprived defensive team to really make the steps forward that you're going to need in this AFC North division to really win. And I mean, even with the Ravens being the best team in the division, the Steelers always play the Ravens hard, always give them tough games, and are likely to split the games, if not win the series throughout the year in the division play. So you've seen Mike Tomlin and his Steelers team, and who just brought T.J. Watt back, got him back in the fold before training camp, made him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history to lead your defense. You still got a guy like a Hayward to lead this defense. You still got a guy like a Darius Slay that you brought in, veteran leadership to beef up that secondary, to replace what maybe you lost in Minkah Fitzpatrick, and brought in a Jalen Ramsey, who's a versatile defensive player. Brought in like a guy like a Jonnu Smith to put next to Freiermuth, who can give Aaron Rodgers that two tight end set to do a lot of underneath stuff and play off the run game, to play into the play action offense that Aaron Rodgers loved to do, a big body receiving threat in DK Metcalf. Joe Burrow is probably the fourth or fifth best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. But we saw one of the greatest statistical seasons we've ever seen from him last year. And they've missed the playoffs, 2-3 years in a row now. We can't just keep depending on, they went to the Super Bowl and could have and had a real chance to beat the Rams. And he's one of the few guys that have beat Patrick Mahomes. That was years ago at this point. Shannon Sharp used to say it all the time. I love to hear it. Update your resume. And it's time for Joe Burrow and the Bengals to update their resume, not when it comes to being great players or good players on an individual basis, but when it comes to being a great team. And Aaron Rodgers still has the ability to be a 26 touchdown, 8 interception guy, a 60, bare minimum a 65 to probably even a 70% completion guy, given the offense and the style of offense they'll run, and not being so much the head of the snake to where our game plan completely has to center around stopping Aaron Rodgers and what Aaron Rodgers wants to do and bringing in his guys and this and that. The Steelers know how to draft wide receivers. The Steelers know how to draft running backs. The Steelers know how to draft DNs and bringing in a guy like Harmon. This defense is going to be a Steelers defense. And at the bare minimum, this offense will be a top 15 offense in the league. It will be a top half of the league offense. So with that being said, I just don't see why so many people are down. And you may not like Aaron Rodgers personally. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I am a fan of his game, and our talent recognizes it. I mean, you have to give him that. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen in this game. And a large part of playing quarterback is the IQ for the game, is your ability to still sling that ball, which he can still do. He may not have the mobility, the ability to draw out and extend plays like he used to, but he still has that mind. He still has that arm. And he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen, despite how you feel about his personality or his off-the-field antics or the coronavirus or whatever the case may be. So, man, with that said, we're going to get ready to wrap up the first episode of the Full Court Press podcast. And I just want to thank you for joining me today. Welcome you guys to the journey. If you love sports the way that I do, I really think this is going to be a show and a journey that we all love and enjoy together. And like I said, moving here forward in the future, there will be a lot more fan and listener interaction. I want to hear the opinions from you guys. I want to bring people on the show to debate certain topics if you feel a different way, and hear what you guys have to say in the comments and contributing to this journey, because this show without you can be nothing. And I'm just a sports fan here giving my view, giving my opinion, giving the facts of what I see on the game. So we're going to push through. We're going to push strong. We're going to keep the pace high. And we're always going to have a love for the game that will be displayed in every episode. I want to thank you guys for joining me on the first episode. This is the Full Court Press Podcast, and I'm your host, Elijah Jackson. Thank you. We're out.